Hi there, this is Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how to paint owl on a lamppost. This is an 11-inch by 14-inch canvas, and I have already pre-drawn my traceable onto my canvas. So this is my traceable right here, the paper, and it's taped together. And I used a sheet of graphite paper to transfer that drawing. So I drew I traced it with the graphite paper, and then I went ahead and I outlined the owl on the lamppost with Sharpie. I didn't outline the leaves, but you can choose to outline the leaves too. The point of the Sharpie is because you'll be able to see the painting design, the main drawing aspect of it through the painting. So we'll be doing the background and everything over the entire thing, and you'll be able to see it still. So that's the point of the Sharpie. So if you don't want to do the Sharpie, you can just draw it with pencil, and that should be fine. Or you can do the whole background first and then draw your design. So there's different ways to do that. I am going to go ahead and load my palette with 3 colors: titanium white, primary yellow, and light blue permanent. I am also going to use a 3/4 inch flat wash brush. So load your brush in some water and pat it dry. And then you're going to load the tip of your brush in the titanium white. We're going to start right in the middle of the light. The lamppost is the light source of this painting, so this is relatively where the light bulb would be. And so we're going to paint a circle, and we're going to paint this entire sky actually in a circular motion, starting from the middle brightest part. And so this is going to be pure white, and we're going to do our best to keep this area pure white. And this circle is going to be about as big as the inside part of the lamppost. And so I'm swirling around, I'm painting circles, and I'm just making my circle larger. And then I'm going to grab some yellow on the tip of my brush and kind of drag it out a little bit. And so I'm going to gently blend that yellow in. And don't freak out yet. We don't really have to freak out about blending yet. We just want to lightly add that yellow in there, but we want to make sure we're keeping the inside part bright and white. And so I went ahead and added more white to my brush. And I'm going to gently paint that white over just to make that yellow a little bit lighter. I don't want to touch the middle part because that needs to stay bright and white. So I'm just gently stroking over the yellow and white area where that yellow and white meet. Grabbing a little bit more white on my brush, and I'm going to extend this out a little bit further. And I grabbed more yellow on my brush, and I'm going to keep painting in that circular formation. So it's okay if our yellow and white do not blend perfectly. In fact, we're going to try to make it so it's not completely blended all the way. So it's okay to grab different amounts of yellow and white and paint in your circular strokes because it's kind of a swirly sky. It's not a perfect blend. It's got streaks of white in there and streaks of yellow, and that's okay. The point is we want our middle part to be very bright, and then of course we got more yellow on the outer parts, and right here I'm adding some more white into this sort of outer area. So go ahead and do that. Make that area a little bit more with more white. So we have white right there in the middle. We have a whole bunch of yellow. Then all of a sudden we have more white on the outer part. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to set up this transition of yellow to blue. And if I didn't rinse my brush off and just went ahead and did the blue, it would turn into green. So we don't want that. We want something that is not green in the sky, unless you want green in the sky. I didn't want green in my sky. So I completely rinsed my brush. I loaded more white on my palette. I mixed about equal parts of white and light blue permanent. I'm going to continue to paint circular, but my circle is kind of a half circle right now. And this is just the light blue and the white. And maybe I'll grab a little bit more light blue or a little bit more white in here, and it'll be streaky, and that's okay. We kind of want to go for the streaky look here. But notice how I didn't make any of my light blue touch that yellow, because if I did, it would turn green. So we're going to kind of, later on, I'm going to show you how we can blend that blue with the yellow. But for now, we want our blue to go pretty much all the way to the top. And notice how there's more pure light blue towards the top, just to make it look slightly darker, and then towards the bottom it's more of a lighter blue mixed with the white. So then I'm going to rinse my brush off, and I'm going to load my palette in some Ultramarine Blue. So that's that darker blue way at the top. And then I'm going to rinse and dry and grab that Ultramarine Blue. And so we are just filling in the rest of that area. We are going to blend it down into that lighter blue as well. But for now, let's just fill it all up. You can go all the way to the corners. And if you want, you can gently brush it over the blue. With the blending, you want to really go in gently. If you grab a big chunk of paint and go over that blue, it's not going to blend, but just adding a little bit to the tip of your brush and just very gently brushing downwards. Also, so on the tip of my brush, I grabbed a little bit more of that light blue. So this is wet on wet blending. That light blue and the dark blue are both on my brush and very gently blending down. Again, we are going for that streaky look, so it doesn't have to be blended all the way. And then I can even take some of that darker blue and down a little bit further. But again, we don't want chunks of dark blue paint down in this lighter area, because then there'll be problems. It'll just be too dark, and then we'll have to go back and lighten it up. So just a tiny bit of paint on the tip of your brush when you're blending down to the lighter area. And then I'm going back in here. I'm just kind of continuing to make sure my strokes are all filled in. No canvas is showing through right here. I'm working on a canvas panel, so I find canvas panels actually feel different than the stretched canvas. I find I have to work it a little bit more because it's on a piece of cardboard. I don't know if it's because it kind of soaks into it, but I just find that it's a little bit more harder to paint on the panels than it is on the stretched canvas. So maybe you feel that way, or maybe it's the opposite way around. But what I'm doing here is I am adding a little bit more light blue permanent up in there. And then, so I'm going to show you what you can do. We want this light blue to kind of blend down into the yellow without making it turn green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to freshen up my palette with some more light blue and more white. I'm going to completely rinse my brush off because I don't want any ultramarine blue down there. Get it dried off so we don't have drippings or anything. I'm going to mix about equal parts of white and light blue, maybe a little bit more white than light blue. So a very, very light blue color. And we want a very light hand here. And so that yellow's dry, so we're not going to mix yellow with blue here, but we're just going to add streaks of light blue over the yellow to create the impression that it is a transitioning from yellow to light blue. And you don't even have to think of it as we're blending. It's almost like we're adding like beams of light that are radiating around that center part that's super bright of the lantern. So we can think of these as light beams instead of blending. And so you can see kind of the impression that it's making just with those few light blue streaks. It's kind of allowing the eye to think that that yellow is transitioning to that light blue. So in the bottom left and right corners, I actually added some of that ultramarine blue just to make it a little bit darker down there, and a little bit of white too. And I'm just gently, I guess, blending it back out a little bit. I'm not going to completely blend it all the way. And right here, I'm just adding a few more streaks of that darker blue in there. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to do the same thing but opposite. So I'm going to rinse my brush off and I'm going to add some streaks of yellow into the blue area. So rinse it completely off and wipe it dry. Grab some yellow. So I didn't mix that yellow with the white here. You can see that it's not going to be that bright, but just a few streaks of that yellow into the blue area. That blue should be dry by now. If it's not, it may blend to a green. It's already looking a little bit green here, but that's okay. And just a few streaks of yellow in there. And you can go all the way up if you want to, but ideally that top part needs to be nice and dark. And also if you use the tip of your brush instead of the full width, you'll get kind of a thinner stroke in there. And then what I am going to do next is, so I'm going to completely rinse all that yellow off. I loaded my palette with Mars Black. And I want the very top of my painting to be nice and dark, especially the top, upper, right, and left corners. So I mixed, I guess about 1 part black, 2 to 3 parts blue. So it's a very dark blue. So just in the corners, very gently add a little bit of black in there. You can even add some black at the very top edge of the canvas if you want to, but don't lose your curved shape in there. And I know that got cut off there. There we go. And just gently blend it back in. Just be really careful with that black because it takes over super fast. And you can use the tip of your brush to create some thinner strokes in there, but you don't have to blend it all the way. And I'm going to load some more Ultramarine Blue in there. And I'm going to rinse all that black off because so to help you blend, get all that black off and then load your Ultramarine Blue, and then you can gently blend it back in a little bit. And the streaks are fine because we were kind of going for the streaky look in this sky. It's a swirly night sky with the light source being the light of the lamppost. And so also we're going to do some splatter stars in there. So for some reason when you do splatter stars, the little splats of stars, it kind of helps to give your sky a lot more dimension. So that's going to look really pretty. But what I'm doing here is adding a few more streaks of white in there, just a few, just that yellow, since I did mix that yellow with the white, it was kind of dull. So I wanted to kind of brighten that up a little bit by adding a little bit of white in there. And right there, it was way too bright. So I went back and added some more light blue to kind of dim it down a little bit. And so next we're going to do those splatter stars that I was talking about, and I like to use a toothbrush. So I found the easiest way to do this is to take your finger, dip it in the water, and use that to wet your toothbrush, and then take your finger and dip it in the white and apply it to the brush. And it kind of creates the right consistency of water to paint because you don't want it to be too wet or too thick. And then you flick it, and this gives it the really, really fine splatters. If you want it to be thicker, add a little bit more paint to it and less water, so you can kind of test out the consistency of it, and you can angle it different ways. And so that you can see that already is creating a lot of dimension in the sky. And I did it all over. You can do it just in the dark area, but I did it all over to kind of provide consistency, and it looked really nice with the splatters. And so then we'll have to get all that paint off the brush, but we're done with the toothbrush, and we're going to go on to the next step, which is a super easy step. So we're done with the sky, and we're going to do the lamppost next. So I'm going to load my palette with Mars Black. And I'm actually going to use 2 different brushes here. I'm going to use the 12 Bright brush, which is the smaller flat brush, and I'm going to use a number 4 round brush. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to fill in this entire shape of the lamppost. I'm using that 12 Bright brush right now, and I am pretty much outlining the outer part of it, and then I'll fill it in all the way. It doesn't matter the direction that your strokes are going in for now, but I like to still contour the shape that I'm painting in, so the direction of the strokes are going in the direction of the shape. And then you could switch to your number 4 round brush to get into your smaller areas. The thing with this Mars black paint is it gets really thick and it doesn't spread easily unless you water it down slightly. So load your brush in the water, but you don't have to pat it dry, and kind of swirl it in the black, and that allows the black paint to flow a little bit better. And then you can use that round brush to really get into the small areas, and especially if you're painting around the talons and on the angles of the lamppost. So I am going to speed this video up slightly here, and I think I'll go silent here for a little bit, but it's pretty self-explanatory. We're just filling in the shape of the lamppost, so the top part. And we're going to use our round brush especially to go around the talons, and down here in this small area where we go around the curves and the angle. But do not paint where the glass is yet. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to take our round brush and we are going to paint the middle part of that owl's eyes. So for some reason, when I paint owls, I like to start with the eyes and then do all the parts around the eyes. For some reason, the eyes kind of are the focal point of the owl, and I just like to paint them first. So that's what I'm doing here, the black circle in the middle with the round brush. And then I'm going to dry this painting. So if you are at this point, I recommend that you get a hair dryer and dry it, or take a break, because this is a good breaking point. But we want all this black to be dry before we go on to the next step, because we don't want the black to be spreading in with what we are going to be painting next. Then I'm going to load my palette with Cadmium Orange Hue. I'm going to use that round brush, and I'm going to make this sort of orange yellow color. So mixing primary yellow with the orange, I guess about equal amounts. And we're going to paint the next part of the eye. So this is the sort of the outer part of the eye. And you can see that that's not very opaque, it's dark. So I'm going to add a little bit more white to that mixture, and you can see it's a lot brighter, so I like that color better. So that's about, I guess, equal parts white, yellow, and orange to create that color. And just using kind of the full width of the brush, I made the eyes in this demonstration slightly bigger than the ones on the Traceable, so it's a little bit thicker, but you can choose if you want your eyes to be thicker or smaller. It's up to you. And then use that same color combination to do the talons, or I actually made my talons a little bit darker, so adding a little bit more orange to the brush. You can go outside the lines of the Traceable. I usually do. So when I'm painting my stroke, it's kind of a guideline, but not it's supposed to be a coloring book. But if you feel like you need to fill in the lines exactly, that's okay too. So I wanted my talons to be kind of thick at the base and then kind of go to a point. And then I did the beak shape, so that same sort of orange combo, but a little bit more orange. So you can see that beak turned out to be darker. And just with the round brush. Next, I am going to freshen my waters. So I'm going to change out my water so it's nice and clear and not dirty water. But we're going to do the glass part of the lantern next. And the glass part was done with the dry brush technique and the 12 bright brush. So dry brush, we need a paper towel, and we're going to do white and light blue for this. So double load your brush in both those colors and wipe it off with the paper towel. And so there's not a lot of paint on my brush. So when I paint my strokes, it's going to come off very dry and see-through. That's what we want. We're going for a glass look. And this is going to be very subtle. We're not trying to make it look like real glass. My strokes are full width of the brush, going sort of the direction of that glass. So it's kind of tilted diagonally. And you can see right here. So I'm just dragging it down. It's creating a very subtle paint stroke in there. And if I wanted to show a little bit more blue, like here, just adding a little bit more blue to your brush and adding some streaks of blue is going to give it the indication that it is a piece of glass right there. And it's very subtle, but it makes a nice difference in the painting. And you don't have to cover it all, so just a few streaks in there. And that is the glass part of our lamppost. So maybe if I turn my brush vertically instead of using the full width, that will give it a little bit of a different style of stroke in there. So if you wanted to do a few thinner strokes of that glass. And I'm done with the glass, and I'm going to move on to the, I guess, sort of reflection that's happening on the black part of the lamppost. So I'm using my round brush and titanium white. And I'm going to add these sort of angular expressive strokes in there. Very light-handed. Don't press too hard with your brush. And it's going to go kind of diagonally, and it's going to kind of fade out right here. I know my hand is covering diagonally, kind of fade out. So I'm holding my brush very, very lightly here. The paint is only on the tip of my brush, and you can do the same technique dry brush. So if that's not working for you, wipe it off with the paper towel and do it dry brush style. It'll kind of achieve the same effect. And add those streaks of white in there on the angle, the black diagonal parts underneath the lid, and then kind of in the middle. So we don't want to cover it all up. We're not making it look striped or anything. It's just this expressive sort of reflection that's happening. And that horizontal line right there on the bottom of that trapezoid shape really helps bring out the effect of that it looks like a lamppost. And then you can use this opportunity to sort of touch up the shape of the lamppost, especially that rounded part. If you painted your glass and you accidentally painted over the black, you can go back and touch it up here. So that's what I'm doing. What we're going to do next is load our palette with burnt umber. And we are going to freshen up our white. If you need to freshen up your white, go ahead and do that. But we're going to do our owl, and the owl was all done with brown and white, so just those two colors. And I am going to start with the wing because that's the easiest part. It's just a shape, and we're filling that shape in. I'm using my 4 round brush, and I'm making my strokes long, and they go in the direction of the wing shape. And we're also going to do the other wing. That's sort of, we don't see the full part of it, just a little bit of it. So there's my side wing, and then I'm going to do the next wing. So same thing, just fill in the shape. And again, like I said, that you can go outside the lines if you want to. And then, so I mentioned you need to freshen up your white if you need to. So mix brown and white together about equal amounts, actually probably slightly more white so that it's a lighter color. And we're going to do the body part of the owl. So I did this in contouring strokes. I mean, you can fill in the exact shape, but at the top it kind of makes a sort of a heart shape at the top. So I kind of made my stroke kind of curve in that direction. And then everything else is just kind of curving around the talons and around the outer edge. And notice how there's some streaks of maybe slightly darker brown in there. So when I mix my colors, I don't like to mix them all the way because I like to get a little bit of a variation in there. So that's why you see a few strokes of that darker brown in the body area. For the tail, I'm doing the dark color. So without even rinsing my brush, I just grabbed the burnt umber on my brush so it came out darker. Maybe a few streaks of light brown in there, but that's okay. But the direction of the strokes of the tail go diagonally. And here we have the face. So to make this easier, we're going to start by going around the eyes first. So the color is a lighter brown than the wing. So it's the brown and white mixed together, but a little bit more brown this time. So maybe about 3 parts brown, 1 part white. Doesn't have to be the exact proportions. And so I'm painting around the eyes first. And then go around your beak. I know my hand is covering. It's going to move there in just a second, but I'm going around the eyes. And I'm going to go around the beak as well. And go around the shape of the outer part of the head. And if you accidentally cover part of your beak, it's okay because we can always go back and repaint the beak. That's okay. And we're just trying to get all that area filled in. There we go. Now you can see what it looks like. And then that we have the top part of his head to paint as well. And it's okay when you reload the brush and the brown doesn't match, you can always go back and adjust it. So then I am going to paint the top of his sort of feathers. So the feathers above the eyes that kind of go outwards, and I'm just painting those 2 curved lines. So starting kind of in the middle and then curving up and out, contouring around the eye. And notice how I'm loading different amounts of brown on the tip of my brush. So there's different color tints of that brown. So I'm adding some more of that brown in there and painting the feathers. I know this angle doesn't really help because you don't see that very well, but I'm painting some more brown feather strokes around his bottom of his head, a few more above the eyes, and I'm going to go kind of around the eyes some more. So I'm basically doing this sort of feather texture thing by making it look darker. And that's what I have so far. And I'm going to paint some more of that darker brown around the beak. And then I'm going to take that brown and I'm going to add it to the belly area very lightly. I don't want to go in too dark here. So just, I could even go in and add some more white in there if it's too dark, because that brown is a little bit too dark. So I added more white to my brush with the brown, so it's slightly lighter. And I actually like that lighter part, so that lighter brown in there, adding the feather strokes in his body area. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing in the wing, so adding different variations of white and brown in there. Having different sort of tints of brown creates that feather texture. And I'm going to do the same thing to the tail, and just make sure that the direction of your strokes is going in the direction of the shape. And I'm going to go in there and actually with this lighter brown, I'm going to redo some of the feathers above the eye. So that lighter part is just going to kind of make that area stand out a little bit more. And so I'm not covering it, I'm just painting another stroke over it. It creates that extra layer. And you can keep going in and adding more layers and more feather strokes in there. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and dry all of this. And so I can touch up the eyes and the beak, because I painted over a lot of the beak and I want to fix my eyes a little bit more. So I'm using the blow dryer to dry all of that. And I'm going to go ahead and remix my yellow and orange with my 4 round brush. And this time it came out a little bit darker, but that was okay. So I am going to redo my eyes, not redo them, but I'm going to add a second coat of paint to my eyes. And especially this helps if you painted brown over it. You can always, you're going to adjust that. So I'm making that color again, and I'm going back over it. And then my beak as well. So I wanted the left part of my beak to be a little bit brighter, so I added some white to my brush, grabbed some more orange again and blended it back out, and my beak ended up being a little bit more curved and larger. And I just quickly added a second coat to the talons. Then I'm going to rinse my brush off, grab the black, and I'm going to redo, I'm going to touch up the circle, black circles in the middle. So make sure those are nice and round, but they don't have to be perfect. And I'm just trying to get them to be at least even at this point. And then I'm going to switch to I believe this is a 5-0 or a 10-0 liner, and white. And so on the left part of my eye, I'm going to make it brighter with just titanium white. So this is one of those very tiny detail brushes called a liner or a spotter. I use both terms interchangeably, but just with that white, I'm curving on the left part. I'm going to give them that really bubbly eye owl look here. And then I want to blend it back in. So I grabbed more of that yellow color and I'm just going to kind of go over it. This is such a tiny brush. There's really not much blending that can be done with a brush that only has like 5 bristles on it. But just blending it in slightly. So the left part of my eye is lighter. And then I am going to go ahead and do the dots that are on the inside of the eye. So you're going to do 1 or 2. I did 2. So just with that tiny brush, we're going to paint on the upper right area of the circle a dot and then another dot. So there's 2. So we have that bubbly eye owl look. And then what I did was I went in and slightly with black outlined just the right part of the owl's eyes circle on the right side. And then I did a highlight on the left side of the beak. So rinse your brush off, grab some white, and just do a white little stroke on the left side of the beak. And you can do the same thing for the talons as well, a white stroke on the left side as well. So all these little tiny details, and maybe a little bit of black right there on the right side of the beak just to touch it up in that area. All right, we are on the home stretch of this painting. The last thing that we are going to do are these lovely leaves that are falling, which makes it a fall painting. And I don't see my leaves, so I am just painting them in as freehandedly. But if you outlined your leaves with Sharpie, most likely you can still see the outline of them, so you can paint them in. The reason why I'm painting them white first is because it's going to allow our orange to be nice and bright and opaque. Orange and yellow are a translucent colors, so they would be see-through if I just painted them in now, and we would see a lot of skies showing through, which actually might look kind of cool. But I wanted my leaves to be nice and bright, so I'm painting all of my leaf shapes white first. Oh, and really important, you do not have to paint the stem of the leaf white. So just the shape area, the outer general shape of the leaf, not the stem at this point. Since I have the white already, I'm actually going to switch gears here really quick, and I want to paint some brighter stars in there. I love the look of these stars. They're so tiny in this painting, but they just add that extra whimsical look that I love in paintings. But these are just this is what the tiny round brush, and I'm just painting like little asterisk stars, and then I'm going to go back in and add some dots, so there's some brighter stars in there. If I wanted to, I could add some more stars kind of in the lower area, but they wouldn't really show up because it's yellow down there. But that adds a really nice effect to it. And I'm going to go ahead and dry my white leaf shapes so that I can paint them in orange and brown and yellow and all sorts of fun colors. So I'm going to paint them in with my number 4 round brush, and on my palette I'm going to have some fun mixing different shades of orange. So I mixed brown and orange here, probably a little more orange than brown, and this is kind of an orangish brown leaf. And I'm just going to kind of dip my paintbrush in different variations of that orange and brown, maybe grab some yellow and some white, and you can really have fun and create different variations of color. So if you look at a fall leaf, it's not a solid color. It's got blotches of brown and yellow and maybe even some green if you wanted to do green, but there's absolutely no green in this painting. But it's kind of fun just to do different variations. If you want them to be all solid orange, you can do that. It's up to you, but I liked a nice variety of colors. So the ones up here maybe are a little bit more brownish orange. If you need to switch to a smaller round brush to get into some of these smaller leaf shapes, you can do that. I'm going in and I'm just adding some more colors, so a little bit of white in there kind of brightens up parts of the leaf, and just a few strokes of maybe a lighter or whiter color, and maybe if you want you can do blotches of more brown, or just kind of have fun and experiment with different colors. So that's what I'm doing, loading my brush in different variations. And so for the stem of the leaf, you actually need to switch to that tiny round brush to get that effect. So it's a very thin line, and the vein of the leaf, need a very steady hand for this. You can do this with a Sharpie if you want, or a paint pen. The base of each of the stems is a little bit thicker, so kind of start your base by painting like a dot, and then make your stem kind of thinner than that base part. So it starts with a dot, and then you do the line, and then you do the center part of the vein and the veins of the leaf. And so our stems are kind of going in different directions because they're flying, falling off the tree, blowing in the wind, so they're going in all different directions. And then I even took this a step further and made a few more details in my leaf. So I wanted to brighten up some of these up here, especially because they're against that dark sky. But then I took it a step further. So this is just white with a little bit of yellow and orange, just a few strokes of lighter color in there, just to brighten up some areas of the leaf. Perhaps the light is hitting the leaf right there, so it's a little bit brighter on the right side. But that is it. This is the conclusion of the owl on a lamppost painting. I'm going to go ahead and sign my name with that tiny round brush over here on the side of the lamppost with some Mars Black. But that's it. I hope that you enjoyed painting owl on a lamppost with me. If you did this painting, be sure to share. You can join our Facebook group. You go look up Step by Step Painting on Facebook, and you can join the group, and you can share your painting there. Thanks for watching.